Hey all, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to, that's right, Countdown Day. And I can't wait for this one. Last week, we looked at Transformers characters that collectors own no version of at all. Ones that, for whatever reason, you've just missed it, you've never picked it up, or maybe you didn't like the character. Whatever the case might be, you own no versions. Official, third party, any size, class, whatever. You own no versions of that character. Well, it only seems fitting that this week we do the opposite. What character do you own the most versions of? That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe. And while you are at it, light 'em up, baby. Hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that is in the description down below, and also in the description down below. And if you happen to be in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. And this is the exact opposite of last week's question. Last week was a character you don't own any version of. This week is the character that you own the most versions of. In fact, some people only collect one character. Some people never collect doubles. So it's pretty challenging for them, and it sort of meant that they kind of couldn't vote on this one, right? Very, very interesting. However, I think it's also going to be very telling, because as we go through the list, I think you'll come to understand why certain characters keep getting released over and over and over and over and over. And you'll probably see why other ones are released far less often. Number of votes, the voting was very furious, very, very busy. It was a lot of counting up on this one, but it was more structured than I thought it would be. It was more, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't as broad as I thought it was going to be. It was far more centered than I thought it was going to be. So, without any further ado, how about we do our honorable mentions? Our honorable mentions are two, and they are Ultra Magnus. So some people own many versions of Ultra Magnus. The most that somebody quoted, not to say anybody didn't have more, but the most somebody quoted was 8. For Shockwave, the most that I recall somebody voting, the most that I recall somebody like saying they had was, I believe, 7. Neither of them made the actual list. They are honorable mentions. So who did make the actual list? You know how this goes by now, man. We're going to do what we always do and kick things off with number 10 first. Now, number 10 I actually find very interesting because a lot of versions of this character have really only been released as exclusives. Nevertheless, a lot of people love this Seeker and have collected multiple versions of him, but it might not be the Seeker that you're quite thinking of, because it's Skywarp. Yeah. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong, there have been tons of versions of this guy, official, unofficial, where he has turned into odd-looking planes, where he's turned into a Tetrajet, where he's turned into his traditional, where he's been all sorts of size classes. So I get it, but I think a lot of people also find it a bit strange because his deluxe kind of version that is somewhat popular came in, I believe, a 2-pack with an Ultra Magnus. The Earth Rise one came in a 2-pack with Thundercracker, and even the Siege one was an exclusive as well as part of that Phantom Strike Squadron. However, people said, look, we've had a ton of smaller versions of the guy in Core class or Legends class. We have had third-party versions of the guy up the yin-yang. There's a number of official and unofficial masterpiece versions. So yeah, there's a lot of Skywarp, and I think most people really dig the slick black and purple color scheme highlighted with just a little silver. I get it. Skywarp, he takes the number 10 slot. I won't lie, number 9 really surprised me because it's RC. And people said, look, it's so funny. We waited so many years for an RC, with the Generations really being the first version. Though, admittedly, even before her, there were a couple of somewhat successful, arguably successful third-party options. But for something official, really it was around 2014 when we finally got a version of RC. And since then, that mold was released, in North America. It was released by Takara. We have the 86 mold. We have the Earthrise mold. We have the new kind of movie core class mold. We have the movie 3-pack that had motorcycle RC in it. We had the deluxe RC from the Bumblebee movie. We've had the Masterpiece RC. There's been third-party Masterpiece versions. There was that Big Firebird Nicey version. There have been a ton of versions now of RC, and honestly, she's a very prolific character from G1 who really deserves it, and the wonderful adaptations that she's had. Because while I listed all of those, let's not forget RC, and a version thereof, was also in animated, has also been in Cyberverse, has also been in the War for Cybertron trilogy, and ever so many other pieces of fiction. IDW, there's another one, right? So yeah, I guess people like the kind of quintessential female Autobot enough that she's become very prolific with a lot of offerings that fans tend to obviously like. Certainly they like the character, and RC was able to take the number 9 slot. Number 8 is an interesting one and got votes both because of the character and because of his alt mode. It is Sideswipe, and Sideswipe is number 8 because we like his alt mode is just a cool car, right? A Lambo is a cool car, and I guess even if it's stylized, people want to believe that like it's an homage. It's kind of, if you squint and look, it kind of looks like a Lambo, right? Whether we're talking about the Siege or the Classics or the G1 or the Earthspark. Not Earthspark, RID 2015, or the Earthrise, or whatever other version you want. Sideswipe is always kind of a bit of like a, young, charismatic, capable, fast, brave character. And his alt mode, whether it's a Cybertronian alt mode or whether it's an Earth alt mode, is always one sleek, fast, impressive sports car. How can you not love Sideswipe? Plus, the guy is a beautiful mix of red, white, and black. Great color scheme, great character, great alt mode. Yeah, Sideswipe. He takes the number 8 slot. And here we are at number 7, and I'm glad that we're at number 7. I'm glad that number 7 is this character. It is Grimlock, and we've had so many versions of Grimlock, whether we're talking about the Studio Series 86, whether we're talking about the G1, whether we're talking about the Classics, whether we're talking about animated, whether we're talking about Power of the Primes, the Black Mamba. We could be talking about the FOC version, the Planet X version, the MP version, the couple of like third-party MP versions, the RID 2015 version. I can go on and on here. The Cyberverse version, I'm pretty sure Earthspark has a version. Like, come on, man. Grimlock, whether he's the leader of the Dinobots or the only Dinobot, he's always a character that people gravitate to. Whether he is jovial, intelligent, and even, dare I say, eloquent, or whether he's a brute and a little bit of a moron. Any way you cut it, everybody loves a Grimlock. In fact, people love many versions of Grimlock, and they have many versions of Grimlock, and that's why he took the number 7 slot. Number 6 is a turbo-revving young punk by way of Hot Rod. This is the Kingdom Core Class Hot Rod, or Legacy Core Class Hot Rod, who I put with my Star Convoy and kind of use them as like the little Hot Rod that came with Star Convoy. There's, of course, the Studio Series 86 version. There is, oh my goodness, the MMC version. There is the Titan's Return version. There's the IDW version. There's the G1 version. There's the Unicron Trilogy version that turns into that cool truck. To be fair, I put votes for Rodimus, Prime, Hot Rod, and Hot Rodimus all together, because in essence it's all the same thing. It's like, we didn't get any votes for Orion Pax, but if I did, I would have put him with Optimus Prime, right? Because in essence it's the same character. It's sometimes you gotta use a bit of creative liberty with some of this. But yeah, tons of versions, whether as Rodimus, Hot Rod, Rodimus Prime, Shattered Glass, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, Hot Rod, in all of his glory, takes the number 6 slot. And now, of course, a hush falls over the crowd as we have reached the most coveted of locations, the ever-popular halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we have someone who I kept waiting and wondering where this character was going to end up on the list. And you know what? Middle of the road seems as good as any for Soundwave. I was going to say Shockwave. Soundwave. Yeah, I mean, again, are we talking about the G1 where he turns into a cassette player? Are we talking about the, War for Cybertron trilogy version? Are we talking about the animated version? Are we talking about the Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron version? The Transformers Prime version? The Cyberverse version? I don't know if he's an Earth Spark or not, but like, again, comics, games, cartoons. Are we talking about him being a satellite in the movies? What iteration of Soundwave? Doesn't matter. He's had so many great versions along with his little minions. Soundwave, eyes and ears everywhere. Soundwave, always watching, always listening, always menacing, always popular. And that's why there are so many versions of him. That's why fans have so many versions of them in their collection. Soundwave takes the number 5 slot. At number 4, we're sticking with the Decepticons and Megatron. Now again, Megatron has had so many versions of himself and had so many alt modes. I mean, just in the movies, we've had Megatron be a plane in both the original movie with the Cybertronian plane and I guess Cybertronian and a little bit of Earth in The Last Night. We've had him be like a rock spiky Cybertronian tank. We've had him be a beat up transport truck. All of those versions of Megatron just from the movies. What about being a tank, whether it's the G2 or whether it's in Unicron Trilogy? What about the version of Megatron, pardon me, in RID 2001 that had like 12 modes? What about the G1 that turns into a Walther P-38 or turns into a tank? What about the Devastation version, the War for Cybertron version? What about the core classes, the deluxes, ever so many others? 2 MPs, a bunch of unofficial MPs, some KOs, or Toy World's Hegemon. Ever so many versions of the Decepticon leader. Ever so many versions of he who honestly is one of the prime antagonists of all of Transformers lore. Megatron, in all of his glorious forms, takes the number 4 slot. And now here at number 3, we get the Decepticon that fans own the most versions of. In fact, a number of fans that voted for this character said this is the only character they collect. One person quoted as saying that they have 47 versions of this particular character. I'm sure some collectors have more, especially if it's the only character they get, but I can only go on the number that was quoted to me. 47 is an awful lot of Starscream. But you know what? Again, whether we're talking about Legends class or Core class, are we talking about Prime or G1? Are we talking about Earth, Rise, or Siege? Are we talking about Tetrajets? Are we talking about the Impossible Toys version? Are we talking about the little tiny versions of like Creos and that sort of stuff? Or some of the super deformed versions that you get? Are we talking about the Premium Finish version that was Siege? Are we talking about the Coronation Starscream? Any and all iterations. Armada Starscream, there's another one. Cybertron Starscream, there's another one. I could go on and on and on and on for days across all fiction. If you're gonna have Decepticons, if you're gonna have Transformers, at some point you need to have the conniving, the scheming, the untrustworthy Starscream. The single most, I'm gonna say popular Decepticon, and the Decepticon that the most fans have the most versions of in their collection. Man, how can you argue with it? Starscream, he takes the number 3 slot. Well, if Starscream is the Decepticon that fans own the most versions of, that means that number 2 and number 1 must both be Autobots. Well, at number 2 we have one that, come on, it was a foregone conclusion that this character was going to be on the list. Number 2 is Bumblebee. Whether we're talking about this, KBB's Hornet's Agent, either of the New Age versions, which this is based off of, by the way. The first New Age version is what this is based off of. Whether we're talking about G1 Bumblebee, whether we're talking about the Classics Universe Bumblebee, which is still a fantastic one, by the way. Maybe we're talking about the Titans Return Bumblebee, or the War for Cybertron Netflix Bumblebee. Maybe we're talking about MP Bumblebee. or the other MP Bumblebee, or any of the third-party KO versions of Bumblebee. We could be talking about some of the non-transformable stuff. We could be talking about the things from 3.0 with their Deluxe and their M Deluxe, probably a premium or two in there if I'm not mistaken. Bumblebee, whether you like him or whether you don't, you can't argue with his popularity, and therefore you can't argue with fans having ever so many versions of him. People never quoted a number of Bumblebees to me, but what they did do is show me a number of pictures of a bee infestation in their house. Bumblebee, he takes the number 2 slot. And here we are, tippy top number 1. Number 1 easily. High 3-digit vote numbers for this guy. The highest number of versions of this character that was quoted to me was, get this, 179 versions of the Autobot leader Optimus Prime. And I mean, come on, it makes perfect sense. Optimus is like everyone's leader, everyone's father figure. Everyone has an Optimus. You know, if you're like a Doctor Who fan, everyone has their Doctor. Well, everyone has their Optimus too, right? Whether it's the War for Cybertron trilogy version, whether it's the Siege or the Earthspark version, or sorry, Earthrise version. Maybe it's the Earthspark version. Maybe it's the Cyberverse version. Maybe it's the G1 version. Maybe it's the movie version, or the B-movie version, or the Rise of the Beast movie version. Maybe it's the Transformers Prime version. Maybe you like the RID 2001 iteration, or the Unicron trilogy Armada version, which we just got a new iteration of in the Legacy line. Maybe you like the Energon Fatimus Prime. Maybe you like the Super version of that. Maybe you like the Ultra Prime, where he is the RID version that combines with Ultra Magnus, or so on and so forth. Maybe it was the MP1 version, or 10, or 44, or the KO of 44, or the KO of 10, or all the repaints of 10, or MP10V. I could go on and on, you get the idea. Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots. The single character that has the most versions in collectors' collections. Makes perfect sense to me. And he takes the number 1 slot. And there you go, man. We've got from 10 down to 1 for the Transformers characters that fans have the most iterations, the most versions of in their collection. Some other ones that got votes didn't make the list, of course, is Thundercracker, the one of the main trio of Seekers that didn't make the list, though it came close. Ratchet, Drift, I thought that was an interesting one. Jazz, Cheetor, Blue Streak, Nemesis Prime, Astro Train, I thought that was a nice one. Strong Arm, I like that one. Blitzwing. Who else here? Who else here had votes? Mirage. Someone said they have every version of Omega Supreme. That's impressive. Prowl, Huffer, Slitherfang. Somebody said they've done a couple of votes and then they said, you know what? Nope. My vote is Slitherfang. I have like 9 of them. Ironhide. That's a popular one too. Prime Cliffjumper, specifically the Prime version, got the vote. Blur, Scourge, Warpath Thrust, Waspinator, Wheeljack, Scrapper, Jetfire. That was a good one. Jetfire I thought was a really great one. Motormaster, and just for good measure, especially since he recently had a Gamer Edition version come out, Barricade. Them and some more had votes as having more than one, having multiple copies, having multiple versions of popular characters. Now you know why we kind of get the same ones over and over, because they keep selling over and over. Let me know which one would top your personal list of having the most iterations of in your collection. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon, see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, stick around, have some fun with us here on the channel. And especially don't forget that somehow, someway, each and every single solitary day, you right there, you do make a difference in the world. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights, at the stop motion premieres, or the old fashioned way right here inside the videos.